In this phase of the web application vulnerability lab, we're going to be doing something that kind of blew my mind a little bit when I was first starting out in security. So we are going to set up a tool called Burp Suite to serve as a proxy between us and the internet, so that when we use Firefox to go out to the internet, all traffic is routed through Burp first before going out to the internet, and then vice versa as traffic comes back. So Burp is essentially kind of like almost like a man-in-the-middle attack for analysis purposes. And this lets us not only see what's happening with all our web traffic, but also to kind of intercept and change that web traffic as it goes across for scanning or for attempting to exploit vulnerabilities. It's all really, really cool. So it sounds really complicated, but the truth is it's actually pretty easy. So first thing we need to do is we need to go find Burp. So we need to go over to Web Application Analysis, and we need to select Burp Suite. And this is going to launch Burp Suite Community Edition, which is the free version of Burp Suite. So it's not Burp Suite Professional. You need to upgrade to Pro to get some of the other capabilities. This is their free version, but still really, really powerful, cool tool. So we're going to be selecting a temporary project because it's Community Edition. And the defaults are fine. So, Burp, there's a whole tons of different ways to modify Burp. And so, once you get really into it, you can create your own custom configurations and load from configuration files. But, that's not what we're going to be doing for this lab. Wait for Burp to start. The first time you start Burp, you might get some other windows too, some other prompts. Just, think about your responses and get through them. And, we don't need to update for the purposes of this lab. So go ahead and ignore, what you see here. Obviously, I've been, working on, I did a little test before I recorded this video. So yours should be blank when you first log in. And so what we need to do is we need to go over to proxy, and we need to validate that intercept is on, because that's what we want Burp to be acting as, intercepting all our traffic from our browser. And so, once you select intercept is on, we need to go teach Firefox to route traffic through Burp Suite instead of going straight to the internet. And so we do that by going to the settings tab. So you can find settings, over here with these little 3 lines, go down to settings. Scroll all the way to the bottom, and you'll see network settings, and select those. And it says, really simply right at the top, configure proxy access to the internet, which is obviously what we want. And so we are going to be selecting manual proxy configuration. Type in 127.0.0.1 port 8080, and that's how we're going to teach Firefox to communicate with Burp instead of directly to the internet. And then you can scroll down. Oh, also need to select also use this proxy for HTTPS, and then we're not going to be doing anything with socks right now. So and then you can ignore all this other stuff for now and just click OK. All right, so now we have taught Firefox to communicate first to Burp before going out to the larger internet. And so with that done, we are going to go navigate to the web for Pentester Lab. So now you can see as I try to navigate to 192.168.2.2, which is my IP address for the web for Pentester Lab, it kind of pauses and hangs up, right? And the reason for that is that Burp is waiting for me to tell it to forward that request on. So then go over here and click forward, and you'll see that the web for Pentester Lab launches. So the other thing that's kind of weird about the web for Pentester Lab, because of those little images for the directory traversal example, it's actually calling out to that now. So you're going to want to just click through those and wait until that's all done and cleared out. So now we have no pending forwards. We have a web for Pentester loaded and ready to go. So go ahead and click on cross-site scripting. All right, and so you see nothing's changed in Firefox, right? Because we haven't given Burp permission to send that request on yet. But you can see if you remember what that URL looked like, it's sending a GET request for that URL. And so just like when you manually changed those URLs, when you were doing your examples for the first part of this lab, you can actually do that right here. So instead of, waiting, instead of waiting until the page loads and then actually manually modifying the URL yourself, you can do that in Burp. And so, obviously that actually opens up some interesting capabilities, being able to modify traffic before it goes across, because you can actually change a lot of this different stuff. But what's really useful in this case is that it also logs your progress. So like if you were doing these tests professionally, you would want to do this way so that you'd have a full record of all the different tests that you've attempted. And so, go ahead and run through 5 examples where, instead of manually changing the URL in the browser like you did at the first part of the lab, just change it up here instead. So, right here, and, make the change here before forwarding it on, and you'll see that, it works the same way. It's just that you have a nice professional record of everything that you've done. And then think through some of the implications. There's a lot of cool stuff that, can happen with, because you can control every aspect of the web request going across via Burp. All right, so we're done with Burp, at least for the purposes of this little mini demo. Do your 5 examples, and you're going to be good to go. So we also now want to close all Burp windows. And so you'll see now Firefox is kind of freaking out because the proxy server is refusing connections because we shut down Burp. There's nothing to proxy through. So you got to turn off the proxy forwarding. So we're going to go down to settings. We'll scroll all the way back down to the bottom and click settings, and then just no proxy. We'll turn off the proxy, hit OK, go ahead and, test, just make sure that now you can get back out to the internet without any intermediary, and we're good to go for the next part of this lab. So for the next part of this lab, we're going to be using one of my favorite web application testing and penetration testing tools, a tool called ZAP. So on more recent versions of Kali Linux, I actually haven't, it doesn't seem like Zap's a default anymore. So if you've updated, Zap might not be in your list of tools, in which case go to Google, search, install OWASP, that's OWASP, Zap on Linux via command line, and you'll find somebody telling you the commands to download Zap. They're not hard. Run the commands, download Zap. Good to go. But yeah, it doesn't seem like it's a default anymore, which is a shame because it's a really cool tool. So Zap is a lot like Burp. It's just fully open source, and actually has some cool features that make it almost a little bit more user friendly that I really love using. So, and I'm going to show you one of those now. But for first, let's go through the lab part. So we're just going to go ahead and persist this session with a name based on the current timestamp. That's fine. No big deal. We're not really going to be saving this stuff because we're not trying to run a report. And we're going to be doing an automated scan. So you need the HTTP part, but then after that, we're just going to add our IP address, 192.168.2.2, which is my IP address for my Web for Pentester Lab. Yours might be different, so just put in the correct IP address, which again you can just grab from right here if you don't know it, off the top of your head, and then just click attack. And so what this is doing is it's going to, at first, it's going to spider the site. So it's going to try to figure out all the different links on the site, just like, say a search engine would spider the internet to figure out what links are there. And then it's going to actively scan the site for vulnerabilities. And so you can see this. This is the history of the scan. You can go over here to alerts, and you can actually see these in real time as they come across. And you can see, hey, like there's path traversal vulnerabilities have already showed up. And again, this is this is all you need to do. Run the scan. It's going to take a couple minutes. You can see like it's been going for about 30 seconds, and I'm only 14% done. So it takes a little bit of time, but all your alerts will be in this little flag section here, and take a look and analyze them for the purposes of completing the lab. Again, Zap, you can do so much stuff in Zap. You can do authenticated scanning. I mean, the sky's the limit. There's a lot of cool stuff. One thing I do want to show you that is absolutely not part of this lab, but I just want to show it to you because I think it's really cool, and I'm going to turn this off right now. Just like we had set up Firefox to be a proxy or to proxy traffic through Burp for the first part of this video, OWASP Zap has a really cool tool for doing that. It takes a little bit of time to load, so just give it a second. But it has pre-configured browsers, so that's all set up for you, which I mean that's cool and all. But what's even cooler about that is that, and you can actually see as I'm traveling, as I'm traversing the site manually, all that history is showing up here. They have something called the Zap Heads Up Display, and so you can take the HUD tutorial if you want, or you can just click Continue to your target, and all that same stuff that we're doing with the spidering and with the active scanning, you can do manually just by surfing around the site. So you can see on the pages, the different alerts and vulnerabilities will pop up here. And it's important to note, this is actually a passive scan right now. It's not actively attacking the site. One of the things about web application scanning that's difficult is that it actually tries to break into the site, right? It actually attempts SQL injection, it attempts cross-site scripting, and that can be really high pressure on a site. I mean, it's a lot of it can be pretty intense. It can bring down websites. It's obviously very illegal if you don't have permission to do it, because it's actually attempting sort of an automated penetration test. But if you do have permission to scan a site, you can actually go in here and you can configure this to let it know what sites you're allowed to test, and then you can actually start that active scan here. And instead of running the scan in an automated fashion like you saw on the last screen, it will do it by each page you visit. So as you visit a page, it will scan that page for vulnerabilities. And so you can obviously see on this page, we're actually not showing any high alerts, but we do have a medium alert, showing up on this page. I bet if we were actively running an active scan, it would pick up on the fact that this was vulnerable to cross-site scripting, and it's just really cool. And so you can do this in passive mode, again, not in active mode, but I mean, you can go to any site you want passively and travel and kind of see alerts or findings at a passive level. And you can also see something that's really interesting, and as alerts come through, they pop up. You can see if you wanted to go back to the main screen and kind of see what's actually happening, you can see at a pretty big, detailed way exactly what's going across from request and response to the web server. I mean, it's kind of an endless tool for learning about how the web works. I think it's just really cool. Again, not part of this lab, but it's just one of the neatest, most fun things, particularly as a beginner, that's available in OWASP Zap. But again, not part of the lab. For the lab, just run that scan, let it go. It'll probably go for about 5 minutes and do the analysis for the lab, and that's it. And so just to recap, we used Burp Suite as a proxy for internet traffic for not just scanning, but also to manipulate the responses going across to execute the attacks that you did in the first part of the lab. And then for the second part, we used OWASP Zap to actually scan the web for Pentester Lab environment to find vulnerabilities. So good, have fun. This is a really fun lab, and I just think web application testing is the best. I think it's the coolest part of scanning. It's one of the most fun scans to run. So just have a good time and be safe.
This tutorial was prepared by the Center for Cybersecurity and Privacy Protection at Cleveland Marshall College of Law, Cleveland State University.